Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. Anastasia, Cosmic Astrology with you guys. Going to talk about the new moon in Pisces, which is coming up in a couple of days' time on the 23rd and 24th of February, depending on whether you're in the southern or northern hemisphere. Today is the 22nd of the 2nd, 2020, so quite a big day from the level of numerology. Number two is about balance, relationships, love, harmony, equality, all those things. So it's quite an important day on that level. It's actually very, very interesting. 2202 2020. Lots of twos in today's vibration, today's frequency. So have a think about what that might be feeling like for you and what that might be bringing up. But generally, it's got to do with sharing. It's number two, relationships. Okay, so the new moon in Pisces is a interesting, beautiful new moon that's coming up, and it's got some lovely aspects to it actually, and it has a very important midpoint as well, which I want to touch on. So before we look at the chart, I guess the thing that I want to kind of start with is that the way to look at this particular new moon at the moment, because what's happening is the sun has engrossed into Pisces, obviously, and the moon has caught up to the sun at 4 degrees, actually, which is what creates the new moon. Now, think about where we've been and also where we are moving towards. So the sun in Pisces it's the end of a cycle, isn't it? So when you think about it in the bigger picture, we have arrived at a place in our own life, collectively, in our own consciousness, with a cycle that is completing, that is closing. It was a very big year in 2019. There was, a lot of dramatic things were going on. There was a lot of crisis. There's, collectively, there's huge things going on, still are, relative to the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which has now it's completed its actual conjunction, which we've been in that frequency for the last, year and a half or so. But we're still in resonance of that frequency and that vibration because we still have Saturn and Pluto fairly close together. Jupiter's catching up, in the sign of Capricorn. And next month, Saturn is going to ingress into Aquarius. So we're still at a point. It's a paradox in a way, because on the one hand, we are stepping into a new moon, for example, in the next couple of days. Three main things about that. The new moon, as we all are aware, is always a point of a new beginning, right? It's planting the seed and putting forth the intentions of what you wish to work through, cultivate, integrate, manifest in your consciousness, in your life. Now, when it comes to Pisces, we're talking about the end of the cycle in terms of the 12 zodiac signs, right? We've reached the completion point. So that within itself has an inherent expression or manifestation, if you like, which specifically correlates to letting go, to surrender. Even though it's a new moon, meaning planting a seed and setting your intentions forth, at the same time, it's also about releasing and letting go. And that's not an easy thing to do, because when it comes to the Neptune frequency, which is what rules this new moon, Neptune, Pisces is about dissolving form, dissolving barriers, dissolving the control of the ego, hence the necessity to surrender, because you can't step into Neptune and Pisces with this intention of I need to control the outcome, I need to control where I'm going, what I'm doing, the decisions I'm making, and so forth. Neptune is without question the most difficult vibration to understand and to work with, because it is literally stepping into the unknown. It's kind of like when we reach the Pisces season, the Pisces energy, and here we have a Pisces new moon, we are standing in a space in our life where we can see the world behind us. We can see everything that's been, everything in terms of our whole life even. And there's this incredible sense of attachment, and also wanting to hang on, right, to what we have created. Hence the resistance of letting go. And at the same time, the Pisces archetype stirs up within us that desire to want to step forth, but the stepping forth is into the darkness of infinity. We can't see what's before us. And the new moon is very similar to that, because the new moon it's like the dark soil, you know, it's literally dark. You can't see what's to come. You can have all these dreams and these desires and these intentions and these wishes, but you don't actually know what's going to flourish, right? Until the new moon phase completes, which is in 3.5 days' time after the new moon, for instance. That's when you start to get the beginning of the emergence of what it is that's actually going to grow relative to that new moon. So the new moon itself holds a vibration energy that we don't know what will be. So that too requires us to, it's important to have your intentions, but it's important to set your intentions and then just let it go. You can't control it. In the same way, Pisces is all about surrender, and it's surrendering the ego in order to merge with the higher self and to merge with the divine will. So the frequency for this month, starting towards the end of this month, rather, into March, is really about stepping into an area where we just have to surrender and let go, because we have to close certain things off relative to what we've created in our life, right? And we have to step into that space, which requires tremendous faith and trust. Now, Pisces has blind faith. It doesn't need proof. Scorpio is the archetype that demands proof, but Pisces, when we are able to resonate with that frequency, it has the ability to let go, to surrender, to trust into what it actually can't see. And we literally can't see it. So it is absolutely impossible to control what you want to see coming. So really it's about how do you find the ability to completely surrender, let go, and trust, right? Those are the questions that will come up with this new moon. Now, the Pisces frequency also is the zone that takes us into, it's a bit more, it's about retreating or withdrawing a little bit more, you know, so thinking more about your spiritual life, thinking about, I mean, we can throw into this, you know, the world of the arts as well, because that Pisces very much correlates to artistry, artistic energy, and a midpoint that's very strong in this new moon speaks to that, and I'll go into that in a moment. But with Pisces, it's just really about letting go of control, to put it very simply, you know, and one of the best ways to let go of that is obviously to trust the unknown, to trust what's uncertain. How does one do that? Especially, you know, if we have so much invested in what we think we've created and what we've put in place in terms of what we wish to see the outcome to be, right? So it's a very tricky energy. It's a very tricky space to be in. And you can't trick your mind into thinking it can do it. It has to come from within you, from the deepest place within you. And you need to resonate with that frequency in your own way, however that may be for you. And, you know, there's various ways that people do it. You know, some people, you know, practice a lot of meditation. That you might go on a retreat, you might go on a weekend workshop, whatever it is that enables you to actually step into that space where it's literally like staring into nothing, into the abyss. So the practices that get us close to being able to step into that kind of frequency are practices like meditation. The world of the personality and the world of the ego cannot get you there. The world of the ego is busy building externally. And Pisces is the very opposite to that. So with a new moon in Pisces, we really have to take a step back, surrender, let go, trust of this new birth that's coming through for us. Now, the other things that speak to this new moon is a very important midpoint. And what I'll do is I'll just bring up the chart of the new moon, because I just want to show you guys visually. Now, this is a chart drawn for Melbourne, so obviously don't worry about the house location of things. But the thing that I want to just talk about a little bit is some of the aspects coming up, over the next few weeks and for this new moon as well. So if you look at this new moon, here it is here at 4.5 degrees of Pisces. Okay, sun, moon together, 4.5 degrees. And you can see Mercury, which recently went retrograde in the sign of Pisces, conjunct the new moon, okay? And if you look a little bit further on, you can see Neptune at 7 degrees, 17 degrees of Pisces. So the Neptune itself, technically speaking, is quite far away from the new moon in terms of the distance, the orb between it. But what drags the Neptune into this new moon is that Mercury is conjunct this new moon, okay? And when we talk about midpoint astrology, midpoint is an area of astrology that is incredibly powerful and incredibly useful to utilize in your natal charts, in forecasting, transits, progressions, all sorts of things. Now, in this case, what we have is Mercury is conjunct, pardon me, the midpoint of the new moon and Neptune, okay? So Neptune gets dragged into the frequency of this new moon, and of course so does Mercury. So we have this little stellium here of Pisces, which is the new moon beginning a new journey. The beginning of the new journey requires you to trust, surrender, and let go. You can't begin this journey without being able to do that. That's a very important part of this new moon. And what does that mean, really? Well, some of the things it's pointing to is that, well, first of all, Uranus is forming a sextile to this new moon. Let's just unpack that a little bit. The Uranus forming a sextile to this new moon is a very fortunate aspect, actually, relative to the new moon, because, first of all, the sextile is it's an aspect that presents opportunity for one. It's an aspect that presents flow and no resistance. And Uranus itself is the archetype that correlates to waking up, to breaking ground, breaking new ground, to removing old layers, to deconditioning, to connecting further and more deeply to your authentic self and who you are becoming. So here we have Uranus offering a supportive aspect to this new moon, saying, hey, here is the new moon, which is about surrender, trust, letting go, and stepping into the unknown. And then Uranus is assisting this process by the sextile aspect, and Uranus itself correlates to stepping into the unknown. So it's kind of like a double signature that we have for this new moon in a positive way, enabling us to be able to do that, right? We also have Mars forming a sextile to this new moon, and that is also a fortunate aspect. It's the same thing, it's a sextile. So it's offering a supportive flow relative to the new moon, stepping into this. It's literally like stepping into nothingness. And the mind and the ego really struggles with that, right? Because the ego is all about form, and Pisces is about dissolving the form. So you can see the dilemma that one might encounter with this energy. How can I, just totally let go and let go of all form? That freaks the ego and the mind out, because it creates this anxiety of, well, I can't control my life if I do that. How can I control what's happening if I just completely surrender and let go? Well, you can't have both. So the only way to step in is to completely let go and trust. And just trust that the divine intention, the divine plan, is in accordance with your higher self and what needs to take place. You just, there's no psychological build up of this, of I can do it. It's literally just taking that chance, taking that risk, stepping in and just letting it happen, because you can't do it any other way. That Mars forming a sextile to the new moon is really great, actually, because it's more or less saying that Mars correlates to your conscious ego desires. Conscious ego desires, what you're trying to consciously actualize and activate from the point of view of your goals and your conscious desires. Okay, so Mars is a very different frequency to Neptune and Pisces, clearly. But in this case, there is a supportive aspect saying, you know what, it's okay. It's okay to let go. I can actually apply some level of my conscious will relative to this new moon in terms of trusting and letting go. There's no friction, okay? Mars is not presenting a resistance or a friction to the new moon. It's actually supporting the new moon. It's ready to step into that space from some kind of conscious capacity, right? So that's the Mars component in this picture. In addition to that, Mars is conjunct the South Node, okay? And the South Node is in Capricorn, right? Now, that South Node is coming up to, or Venus, Chiron is coming up to squaring that South Node, but I'll leave that for a later conversation. But Mars is actually square Chiron here as well, and Mars is on the South Node. So this is part of the story of this new moon as well, okay? So we have to think about it from the level of, if Capricorn correlates to the construct of your conscious reality pertaining to this life, right, and all the conditioned layers that have taken form into your life, Capricorn, right, Mars on the South Node, there's something being unpacked here relative to past lives even, okay? So the conjunction of the Mars South Node is bringing up material into your own conscious desires, Mars, of what you're wanting to actualize and create. But the thing to understand about this, it's on the South Node. So there's something that needs to be completed and finished relative to old structures in your mind, relative to the reality that you have constructed in your mind about your life. So again, this is another process of releasing old layers, old structures that have come to a point in your own life, in your own evolution, in your own consciousness, in your own life circumstances. There has to be an understanding and recognition of what it is about certain structures that I've held on to that really do need to disintegrate now. Mars South Node is letting something go. Something from the past is coming in, but it's only coming in order for you to recognize where it actually exists in your consciousness, in order for you to be able to release it and let it go. And the releasing is possible because that South Node and that Mars is sextile the new moon, which takes us into this new direction. And the new moon, therefore, is trine the North Node. And the North Node is in Cancer, which is basically it's been quite a long cycle, and it's still continuing, a cycle of where collectively we are creating, if you like, a new sense of identity. Cancer. It's our own subjective self. We are creating a new subjective sense of self, a new level of who we think we are or who we think we've been. Capricorn. That's who we've been, and what we're trying to assimilate towards is the North Node in Cancer, which is a whole new identity. So the South Node is sextile the new moon, supporting the past material that may come into your consciousness, where you have greater clarity of what needs to further be disintegrated, deconstructed. And then the North Node forming a trine is a supportive aspect of what we're trying to integrate relative to the North Node in Cancer, which is this new sense of self. And also we have the Chiron in Aries, okay, which is square that Mars. So there is some friction there between Chiron and Mars. Now Mars is exalted in the sign of Capricorn, so there's some really good qualities that we can experience through the Mars in Capricorn in terms of being further being able to perhaps restructure our life, restructure a new reality, as it were. And think about that even from a really objective level in terms of the collective. You know, there's the shift in consciousness is huge at the moment. It has been for a while, but it's just huge. I mean, even just looking at not River Phoenix, Jacqueline, I can't even say his first name, Jacqueline Phoenix, the brother of River Phoenix, in the American awards that were shown, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. He's obviously an advocate for animals, right? So he identifies as vegan. And the vegan lifestyle, very quickly, is not, it's not about food. It's actually about life. It's a lifestyle, right? So it's not a diet. It's literally a belief system, you could say. And he's a very powerful advocate for that. And in a situation where everyone's totally dressed up, it's Hollywood, everyone's glammed up, putting on their facade and whatever. Here comes a guy when he gets his award for his performance in the movie he did, The Joker, and his whole speech was bringing consciousness in to you could say, a community of people that most of which would not even be interested in that. Most, I'm not saying all, but let's say many, right? So here he is bringing in consciousness, awareness, compassion, right, into an industry that has very little to do with that. Most people would have a very strong opinion of that, and most people wouldn't even be interested in what he was saying. But on the other hand, he is in a powerful position to use his voice in the way that he has, and he's done that. That's just an example of how much the shift in consciousness, in how much it is necessary for us to evolve in order to save the planet, as it were, if I can put it like that, to understand that raping the earth for all her resources in the way we have been is not sustainable for humanity, period. And that's, another very strong message that was contained in his speech. That's what he's trying to wake people up to, right? Climate change, global warming, the whole thing. I mean, I can't recall, I don't frequently watch the Grammys or whatever they're called, but I really don't recall in my whole life ever seeing an actor get up and actually speak about matters that are so important for future generations, right, in a way that was so sincere and authentic from his heart and soul, because he lives and he walks what he is preaching, right? So these are the powerful things that are coming through with all the shifts in consciousness and the absolute necessity of our own evolution and our own necessity to wake up to what's really happening and stop keeping, the blinkers on our eyes and just keeping it that way because it suits me. It suits me to just ignore that or to just pretend that's not happening. We can't continue to deny, ignore, and pretend. We have to become active in our evolution in a very conscious way, as much as we possibly can relative to our own level of consciousness and awareness. Okay, so when you see a lineup like this in a new moon chart, these are what I just shared was just one example, just one. That there would be loads of them, but I just shared one relative to the bigger picture of collective evolution, right? And the crisis in consciousness that we are experiencing collectively. The crisis in consciousness needs to come through because that is the primary way that change will ultimately continue to evolve and be active and take place. So our own personal little part in all of this is incredibly important. And so when we are doing our own personal growth work, when we are actively wanting to align with the divine will, with our highest will, what is that about? Is that about our own personal, selfish little ego self? No, it's not. I don't think it should be. It really needs to be about humanity, Mother Earth, the bigger picture, and our future. Because, hey, we might leave this world in 10, 20, 30 years, but we'll come back. So to think, look, who cares? I've only got, 10 years left or whatever it is. I'll just enjoy it, make the most of it, whatever. Well, you're going to come back. So the work that we do now holds tremendous significance, first of all, for our soul's evolution, waking up, and also for the earth, the generations that are being born, and for our return, because we will return. So these are the things that we need to consider from higher perspectives. So going back to this new moon, think about this new moon in that context from the point of view of this new moon correlates to surrendering, letting the form dissolve, aspects of the ego, so that I can find a greater sense of alignment with my highest will and the divine will. Why do I want to do that? Because I want to become more enlightened. I want to wake up. I want to evolve. This is what we need to be thinking, feeling, understanding, connecting with, desiring. Because fundamentally, the soul on its journey is always seeking to merge back to source. The form, all right, that we create and co-create, which are all the different life experiences we have, are absolutely necessary, are valuable, and a part of our evolution. But underneath, at a much deeper level, the soul is always longing and yearning to return back to its source. And that's what Pisces takes us into. Pisces is the archetype. It's the two fish swimming in opposite directions, bound by a cord, esoterically ruled by Pluto. Now, the esoteric component is incredibly powerful. Pluto, being the ruler of Pisces in esoteric astrology, is saying to us that cord that binds the two fish, which is the ego and the soul, right? So one fish is operating from the personality ego level, and the other fish is totally infused with divine source creation to all things. So there exists this extreme duality in the experience and resonance of Pisces, of being here in the physical, having the experiences we're having, and then at a very deep level longing to merge back to the absolute unity, oneness, unconditional love, where there is no pain and no suffering at all. But the Pluto component esoterically ruling this new moon is the ability to transform, right, the lower self to the higher self, we could say. One fish to the other fish. It's alignment of the higher self to the ego. We can't do that if we do not let go of form and structure. We can't do that if we don't surrender and trust into the unknown, into the uncertainty, into the abyss of nothingness, which might sound really crazy to some people. It's like, well, what does that mean, the abyss of nothingness? Well, that's what Pisces is. That, you know, it's the, if you think about the ocean, how vast is the ocean? So everything that we think is form, which is from Aries right through to Aquarius, all that structure, all that development infuses back into Pisces, dissolves in order to be reborn in Aries. So this is a fundamental developmental journey and cycle we are experiencing on a day-to-day basis, based on our natal chart, based on different transits and progressions and things that are going on at different times in our life, based on the new moon, full moon, and so forth, based on lunar eclipses, solar eclipses. We are always encountering this. Now, one other thing that I want to say as well is this this idea of letting go and surrendering. Here's one way to draw a connection that might be helpful for you. When you go to sleep every night, what do you do when you go to sleep? Do you control your sleep? No. Is there any level of control when you go to sleep? No, there isn't. You don't control your breath. So we die every night, as it were, because we surrender every night. That's Pisces. So by letting go, in other words, and surrendering, everything will be okay. In the same way that when you go to sleep and you surrender and you die to the world of the ego, the conscious daylight, that goes into the underworld. The sun goes, under us, as it were, over the horizon, under the earth. And we go into this other sphere, Pisces, which is of no form, no control. But we wake up the next morning in the conscious daylight with the sun again. And there we are back again in our personality and our ego and, just getting on with it, as it were. So think about that from, the context of this new moon. That's what this new moon is. That's what it holds. That's the frequency it holds. Completely letting go without knowing the outcome. Very difficult to do, but absolutely necessary. And, given that this is the new moon for the next lunation cycle, then that's going to be somewhat, the flavor of the next, 4 weeks for us. Also, there's a Venus square Jupiter exact actually on the day of this new moon. Now, both Jupiter and Venus are in their debility, as we call it. Venus is in detriment and Jupiter is in its fall, meaning that, and these are the two benefics we're talking about, okay? And specifically Jupiter is not a planet that can inherently bring harm. It's not inherent within its nature. If Jupiter does bring things that are not the most beneficial for us in some capacity, it would be because it goes into excess mode. Jupiter is one of the largest planets, right? Or the largest planet. So it rules expansiveness and things that are big, really big. So when you get Jupiter transits, there's this sense of wanting and needing to totally expand and go over the top with things. Now, the Venus square Jupiter, two benefics, both in debility, there can be an energy here, okay, that correlates to, first of all, creativity. A Jupiter square Venus is not really a difficult aspect. If anything, it gives a sense of overconfidence, overshooting maybe, right? The overshooting part will come because Jupiter doesn't do very well in Capricorn and Venus doesn't do very well in Aries. So the Venus and the Jupiter themselves, they are inherently benefic energies which bring expansion, which bring gifts, which bring blessings, which bring enjoyment, pleasure, all the good juicy stuff in life, right? But both these planets are compromised in these two signs. So there can be this desire, Venus in Aries to want to be just fiercely independent and take charge in the world of your relationships at the moment, and maybe even be a little bit selfish, maybe at certain times that's important to be like that. But the square to Jupiter here is saying just be a little bit careful because you're not going to get the best out of a Venus Jupiter square when they're both in their debility, right? So you might just overshoot with something and end up sort of being quite pissed off or quite disappointed that it just did not work out the way you thought, right? So that can be that Venus square Jupiter energy there. But fundamentally, it's an aspect that actually can bring a lot of confidence, for one, optimism, and it's also got a lot to do with creativity, Venus, Jupiter, right? But there's something that's not quite right, that's not in its complete operation, because these two planets are both in debilitated signs. So it can be this sense of, wanting to take on a particular creative project. You feel really excited about it. Venus is in Aries, it's like a new beginning, and you just go over the top with it, and you end up sort of being left in a position where you think, oh, perhaps I shouldn't have spent that much there, or I shouldn't have, invested so much in that, so just be a little bit careful with that. Apart from that, it's fine. It's not a difficult energy at all, really. Now, Mercury, I just want to go back to this because I didn't finish what I was saying. Mercury at the midpoint of this new moon. In one of my books that's all about midpoints, right? There's a description, for example, when you've got Sun, Neptune, midpoint equals Mercury. What I looked at, though, was moon, because we're sort of looking at the moon here with the new moon. Moon, Neptune equals Mercury. That basically means that the moon and Neptune have a midpoint in the distance between them, and that midpoint is Mercury. What does that mean? Well, here's one suggestion. It's actually a great midpoint, by the way, which is good news. It's control of inner vision by intelligence or common sense, fantasy and imagination, creative thoughts, artistic talents. So inherently, it's not a difficult midpoint, is what I'm trying to point to. Those are the sorts of directions it can take us to. But having said that, Mercury is in Pisces and it is retrograde. So that within itself is also suggesting further to this new moon about the letting go process, because when a planet is retrograde, it is always about taking a step back, revisiting, reviewing, reflecting, revising, and not really acting on things. Action is direct movement forward, isn't it? So when planets are moving direct, we take action. When planets go retrograde, we too must go retrograde. We must go retro within, right? So this Mercury in Pisces retrograde during this new moon is also asking us to go deeper in our own consciousness, mind, left brain, Mercury, but Pisces, right brain, intuition. We have to go in order to access the material that is available to us. The material that perhaps connects us to greater visions for the future moving forward, connects us to our dream life, connects us to creativity, to visions, to intuition, to the divine plan, getting visions or, aspects of a connection with that, a feeling about that. Feeling, water, feeling. All the water signs take us into the inner world, the inner dimension that has no form. Consciousness is like water. It has no form. Consciousness takes the form of whatever it steps into. So you put water in this glass, the water has taken shape of the glass. The glass hasn't taken the shape of the water. The water becomes the glass. That's what consciousness is like. It takes the form of whatever it steps into. And consciousness is that part of the chart that correlates to the 12th house, Pisces, Neptune. Consciousness in terms of everything, not only things that we can see, but even more so everything that we can't see, that exist beneath the layers of the subconscious and the unconscious components within us, which are the primary drivers of our behavior. So this new moon takes us into that realm. There can be feelings or a sense or an intuitive flash of insight. Uranus sextile the new moon. Uranus correlates to flash of insight that just comes into your mind, into your consciousness, out of you don't even know where, because it's not you trying to do it. It just happens unpredictably, unexpectedly. Uranus correlates to electricity. It's that electrical impulse that streams into your consciousness that gives you a new vision, a new understanding. And this Uranus is sextile the new moon. So these are all the possibilities. If you can allow yourself to surrender into this new moon. So this new moon for me represents, not just for me personally, but when I say for me, what I'm saying there is that the message that I feel, again, not from my own personal ego, but from what I've been sitting with, the last couple of days while I've been thinking about this upcoming new moon, what's been coming further and further into my own consciousness is the recognition, actually, even in my own life, of the things that I need to let go of as well. A lot of the old stories that we hang on to, we're attached to. And see, this is where Pisces can be really tricky because of that element of, and we've got all these planets in Capricorn, Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, Pallas Athena, South Node in Capricorn, Mars in Capricorn, huge stellium of Capricorn frequency. There's a very strong urge, and particularly with the planets that are in Capricorn, to still want to maintain the structures and the control in our life. But Saturn Pluto has had a big say on that, collectively and personally, for each of us. And it's a different thing for all of us, obviously. But we still have a lot of Capricorn energy to complete and to work through, okay? But the South Node is Capricorn, the South Node in Capricorn, is indicating the release of those old structures. The Pisces is the element of letting go, The Capricorn is the element of control, but we have a sextile happening with Mars to the new moon, as I said. So there is a lot of assistance there in terms of how we can literally apply our will into this new moon energy and what it might mean for you. And you don't know what it's going to mean. None of us do. That's the whole thing about stepping into Pisces. You step into the unknown, not what you do know. What you do know is behind you, but it's very, very close, still within, your proximity of everything around you in your life. And that's what gives you a sense of feeling like you're in control. And the Pisces is standing on that ledge, getting ready to dive deep into complete darkness where it cannot see anything. So, and the other thing as well about a conjunction aspect, which is the sun and moon being conjunct together. Well, this phase is a new moon, right? But if the moon was behind the sun, it would be a balsamic phase, okay? But the moon has caught up to the sun, and it's getting ready to move away from the sun. That's a conjunction. If it was behind the sun, it would be a balsamic phase, which is a very different experience to a new moon. The balsamic is Pisces, it's finishing, ending, completing. But a new moon is Aries, it's beginnings, right? The interesting thing about the conjunction aspect, and this can also be related back to your own natal chart, the conjunction has all possibilities contained within it. All possibilities. It can, in other words, it can act like a square, it can act like a trine, it can act like an opposition, like a sextile, like a conjunction. It has all possibilities contained within it. And that's why we don't know what the possibilities are until we just allow it to be, allow it to be born, allow it to take the form that it needs to take. So that's how to sort of think about conjunctions in your own chart as well. And that's really a new moon. That's what it is. It's all possibilities, none of which we are actually certain about. And in this case, because it's a Pisces new moon, it really, really, really is complete uncertainty. It's also the completion of things because the sun is in Pisces, and we're working our way through the sun completing his cycle through Pisces, which is about closing a lot of things off over the next few weeks. Again, there's that signature, that message again, and preparing for the sun in Aries, which is the true astrological new year, 21st of March. That's the beginning of the year, the true new year, relative to the seasons, the equinoxes and the zodiac, right? The man-made calendar where we have, new year at the end of the year, 1st of January is the beginning of the new year. That's just a calendar. But in truth, the birth of all things starts at 0 degrees Aries, which is 21st of March. So we are working our way towards the new year. It hasn't even begun yet. The consensus new year started on the 1st of January, but in truth, the new year hasn't begun. So think about that when you're thinking about your life over the next 3-4 weeks, this closure period, Pisces, finishing things off, completing things. That's what this frequency is about. And this new moon speaks further into that, but adds the dimension of a new path being born as well. So it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Okay, let me see. So alignment with spirit. That's what this new moon is. It's alignment with spirit. How beautiful is that? The Mercury at the midpoint stimulates a lot of imagination and creativity. There can be mental downloads that come through. into your left brain from the Pisces dimension, which is, what's that, 12th house? It's everything. Not just this earth plane, all the dimensions that exist, all the other realities that exist, which are held within us, within the 12th house, Pisces, Neptune. So this activates those levels within us that are hidden because they're unconscious. This energy stimulates and activates things that are lying dormant as well. So a lot of material can be accessed from the level of aligning yourself further to spirit, to the divine, further dissolving the barriers of the ego. Let me just say one thing. I'm not suggesting by any means that we need to get rid of the ego. We actually can't. Not while we are in this physical third dimension reality. We need the ego in order to function, actually. Okay, but the main issue with this thing called ego, which is necessary and has its purpose and its function, is that it has become too big for its boots. That's reflected in our whole world everywhere. The greed on every single level, well, that's ego. That's not spirit. That's not your higher self. That's not the divine essence of things. That's just ego out of control. Ego being insatiable, wanting more and more and bigger and bigger and more and more. Okay, so, and in esoteric astrology, the fundamental principle and teachings, and esoteric astrology, you could study it for lifetimes and still not fully get it. It's so vast. But what underpins the study and richness and wisdom of esoteric astrology is the journey of aligning the lower self with the higher self. In other words, the ego with the divine will. That's the whole purpose of understanding and working with esoteric astrology, being able to identify what rules your soul ray, what rules your personality ray, what are those rays, and how are they working together, or how are they resisting each other? And then what is the journey around that, and how do you integrate that and work with that? And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about Pisces. We're talking about merging back to the divine, not because we are disintegrating this body and the ego to nothing. When that happens, that means that this body dies, and then we go into a transcendental space until we come back and take form again, right? So it's not about denying the ego. It's about balancing and integrating it with the highest will. That's what this new moon speaks to. Okay, I think I've probably got my message across. I hope so. Okay, I'll just stop sharing my screen. So to align with transcendental belief systems, to realize the unity of all creation, to dissolve all barriers that prevent the merging back to the power of the cosmic whole, to realize the ultimate source of power. That's what Pisces can take us, help us step into, connect with. Towards the end of the month, by the way, there's well, actually, I'll leave that out because I will be back to do an update for March anyway. And what I was going to share with you now were some really powerful aspects, but they don't happen until the end of March virtually. So I'll leave that for now, and just leave you guys with the hopefully with the message of the absolute importance of alignment with the spirit in your own life, and how this frequency supports that process and that experience, to let go, and to let go of control. Capricorn's control, Pisces is surrender. Much love and blessings, guys. Happy new moon, and look forward to seeing you all very soon with something else. And thanks a lot for subscribing and for taking the time to watch this. And yeah, please feel free to engage and connect in the community section, and below this video, if you have comments or questions, I always welcome them. I try to answer all of them as best as I can. And also, if you want to have a personal reading with me, my details will be listed in the descriptions below, so you can contact me directly. There's various ways I do readings and various types of readings. You can always just email me and we can have a chat. Okay, much love. Bye.